It's Ron Reader Digs the Universe. I'm Ron Reader, and this is Ron Reader Digs the Universe, and tonight, the end of science. My girlfriend was watching old school Scooby-Doo episodes a couple days ago, and it made me think about how all the ghosts and monsters they investigated back in the day ended up being ordinary human criminals. Fraudsters, usually engaging in some sort of land swindle scheme. Nobody believed in ghosts in the early 70s. I mean, sure, some people did, but if you said it out loud, you ran the risk of scorn and ridicule. When I was a kid, it seemed that science, rationality, and skepticism were a big part of American culture. After all, we had just put a man on the moon. We were still celebrating Jonas Salk developing the polio vaccine. Nixon launched the war on cancer, and computers were leaving the realm of science fiction and entering reality. We were, it seemed to my young self, a people of science, and we celebrated scientists as heroes. Flash forward to around 2013 or 2014, I was attending a small dinner party, and a woman there, apparently a sort of alt-med nutritionist, was making scientific claims about the products she would sell to people. I started asking questions about these claims, the science backing them, and made assertions about the dubious nature of alternative medicine. You know, just conversationally. Well, this was apparently a big faux pas. She acted like I was being a total asshole and everybody else was sympathetic toward her. And you gotta understand, everybody in the room was politically liberal. All of us had a bachelor's degree at the very least, but my talking about science in this way was a serious social trespass. Something had happened between my childhood and those last few years before Trump came along and blew everything up. We were no longer a people of science. We had become something else. It would be very tempting to blame this all on conservatives who have become of late very openly hostile to science, but liberals have also played a role. The rise of New Age spiritual attitudes in the 80s, with its mystic crystals, harmonic convergences, witchy spells, and holistic medicine, and so on, descended directly from what Frank Zappa described as the cosmic debris of the hippie movement. Liberals are naturally sympathetic to hippie shit, and this stuff started infecting the left. And it all seemed to reach a dangerous climax with the first wave of anti-vaxxers composed of liberal bourgeois coastal elites. Unfortunately for all of us, this liberal embrace of non-science coincided very nicely with the rise of the evangelicals who reject evolution, global warming, pretty much any science that gives them bad vibes. So the end of science as a dominant cultural concept was somewhat bipartisan, although, like I said, the conservatives are downright zealous about it now. But if it wasn't entirely political in nature, what was it exactly? I can only speculate. When I was a kid, early 70s, during our age of science, the so-called American dream was already starting to unravel. The offshoring of manufacturing broke the union's back, and Reaganomics made the situation desperate for huge numbers of people. It got to the point that one could no longer reasonably expect his standard of living to be better than his parents' was. Then, by the 90s, with the fall of the Soviet Union, the American establishment, paradoxically, in stark contrast and contradiction to everything that was happening on the ground in the real world, became downright giddy over what historian Francis Fukuyama was calling the end of history, or more simply, capitalism triumphant, a belief that greed and profit are the best of all possible worlds. Men who in bygone days might have become great scientists were now becoming hedge fund managers. Writer Chris Hedges finally asserted that commerce had become society's sole concern. Indeed, science is now simply another way to get rich, not the path forward to an ever greater nation. We are to worship the rich and live with economic anxiety. Superstition is where Americans place all their hopes and dreams now, because that's all they've got. And to some extent, I can't blame them. I'm Ron Reeder, and this has been Ron Reeder Digs the Universe. Join me, Ron Reeder, again next week for another episode of Ron Reeder Digs the Universe.